Wake up, buy here, pay here people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here, Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Good morning. Good morning from
Phoenix,
Arizona. We're at the conference. I'm going to move this a little bit.
We think we're broadcasting.
We think we're broadcasting. I hope that. Yeah, I hope it's.
We're showing kind of spotty Wi-Fi here in the hotel, so just a little bit questionable broadcast this morning. Obviously, we're starting late. Our guest is late. Or he's just,
we've got a couple people in the audience. We're just going to pull them in.
Yeah.
Have some fun there.
We'll chat Buy Here, Pay Here this morning.
Absolutely. So we're in Arizona, and
conference kicked
off last night. And as soon as we're done, we're going to be speaking tomorrow. And that will be broadcast live as well. Right. So hopefully y'all will be able to make it, watch that. We'll be streaming in Success as well.
Yeah.
And then we're heading off to San Diego for a couple of days. Right. And I think that we don't have anything else for the rest of the month. Right.
Well, no, morning show stuff. We got Candace Price joining us. We'll be in California by Wednesday morning, and she'll be joining us from Nebraska. We're pleased to introduce, for those of you who haven't met Candace Price, we're excited to have a chance to share her story in more detail.
We had her on as one of the dealers that was coming to NIADA, and we're introduced to her that way. And she's out of Nebraska, and just love her model of what she's doing and how she's trying to help people.
How she is helping people.
How she's helping people. Yeah.
And then Friday we have Jack Carter. So looking forward to that. But here at the conference today, we we had a chance last night to see some of the familiar faces from the industry. So that's always fun.
It always is nice
good to see Gordy and Jeff Martin. And we didn't know they were going to be here. We might have been able to include them in this conversation this morning. But one of the fun things about broadcasting this way is they can see it any time. They can be online and join the conversation now. So,
That's very true. So we'll just catch the recording a little bit later.
And Jared may slide in here with us.
And we left the seat on the end there available for him. But there's some stuff that Jim wanted to talk to you all about that he's been. Those of you who have watched the morning show, and when we have Jim shows his spreadsheets, pretty amazing formulas and stuff. And it's just so many people are like, hey, can I get a copy of that? And it's like, it's no.
It's because it's proprietary,
good morning, George, and good morning,
but also this is basically I built a cash flow forecasting tool many years ago, 2005 to be exact. I've used it many years and revised and improved over the years. And I just finally had the realization that I could use it to do some big math on the entire industry.
He was showing me the big math a couple of days ago, and I was like, whoa.
So this would be fun to kind of walk people through kind of how I backed into the math. So today it was really about talking about what I see in a different way about industry volume.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I'll just share with our listeners now before we share the screen that what you're going to see is based on just bits and pieces of information from, you hear Ken Shilson at a presentation, you hear NIADA, share their counts on Buy Here, Pay Here dealerships. And we plugged in some numbers, and I guess we can share it. I mean, so I'm
going to throw that on over.
And let me just make sure our audience knows. We'll just throw the disclaimer in there right from the beginning. This is just for informational purposes. This is just our own calculation based on feedback from elsewhere. But I think it's fascinating. We got Matt Ruckel in the audience here from Buckeye. You guys know Matt, so he's actually in the room. So glad to have you be a part of this conversation, Matt. So so what we did was we basically took the numbers that I'm hearing.
Do you remember when we did the live event? It's like
it's really slow.
It wants to take its time. There we are. Okay. Very
So here's
good.
all the big stuff. So this is going to take some explanation. I don't know. Is there anything I need to do to make it more visible? Is it something you can see?
Yeah, I
Can you
think
see that, Matt? Is it loaded on your side yet? Oh yeah, I can't get it open.
Okay.
So yeah, he's having trouble with internet over there as well. But
Okay.
it looks like it's streaming on our side. So the colorful cells should be on the screen. There, we made it to the Carolinas as well. Good morning, Karen. So let me explain kind of how I backed into all these numbers. A couple numbers that you see there at the top of the screen is estimated number of buy here, pay here dealers in the U.S. Last number we had was, the last number I've heard has been about 14,000 is estimated. I heard years ago, I used to hear that there were about 45,000 independent dealers, and it was believed at that time that about 22,000 of them were involved in buy here, pay here.
Okay.
And then the rest being independent retail. The more recent numbers are 14,000. So I use 14,000 in our modeling here. And then I backed into how many sales those 14,000 dealers must do annually, because I've also been told that buy here, pay here dealers, the last number I heard, it's been several years ago from Ken Shilson, I believe, cited that buy here, pay here is believed to originate about $10 billion in paper annually.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. And so
that really, if money is king, that should throw a bit of weight.
Yeah.
Too,
and I think where my mind always lands on this when I hear these kind of numbers, and if that's true, and it's pretty close to my math. I mean, Matt, you could throw on a calculator and do, if you got that many dealers doing, even if they average 10 a month or whatever, about what the note amount is, you can probably, get pretty close. And so years ago, when I used to kind of check those numbers against my own experience, the numbers seem to pan out pretty well. And if that's close, if that's 10 billion annually, that's a pretty big segment. And I think my thing is where I always land is like, if buy here, pay here dealers are not providing that solution to the consumer who needs wheels and has credit trouble, who's going to fill that gap? Who's going to step forward and provide that? The answer to me is nobody. I mean, we have obviously folks who like to complain, and we've got, a lot of regulatory agencies looking down on this industry. And I think, I hope that it will evolve to a more cooperative. It seems to be. Obviously, NIADA is working a lot, and the policy conference is coming up. It's just that when I see these numbers, I think of a couple things. We've talked in the past, we've done broadcasts on the subject of friction in the buy here, pay here business. And the friction that I'm really referring to is the friction between the dealer and the consumer.
Okay.
Right. So I'm really thinking, we see a lot of problems. Obviously, the repos make the news and all that kind of stuff, but there's also a lot of conflict, right? And frustration between dealers and consumers. So part of the math that I did in this was to figure out, and this, I don't know if you can see the right side of the screen very well yet. I'll move it over. But what that's telling us, I backed into the math and said, okay, if I make the selling price 11.5, and I'll go down and check where I ended up in terms of an average note amount. But the bottom line is, it looks like we've got about 75,000 sales per month
that are going through, that are just buy here, pay here across the nation.
That's what
75,000.
You would back into that math and say at the average note amount.
And didn't you came in there, it was like, that's if a buyer payer dealer does about 6.
It ended up being
month?
about 6.
About 6
at those.
So that's a pretty low number.
It is low. It's like, obviously there are dealers out there doing big numbers, and then there's dealers doing 1 or 2 who still count them as, and we've met those dealers. Like, there's dealers out there who consider themselves buy here, pay here. They have a finance license, and they occasionally finance when it fits, but they're not really actively, building their buy here, pay here business. So the number, could make sense. It's almost irrespective of that. What we're really trying to get to is the payments. What I calculate is that ends up being around 600 million in payments per month. Say that again.
600 million.
That calculates out to about $600 million in payments per month. And if I do the math at $500 dollars per payment, that comes into about $1.4 million in payments per month. Count the number of payments, but
not the dollar amount, but the number of payments that are coming in.
Yeah.
Right on.
But keep in mind that would be if it were a monthly payment. And we know that a lot more portfolios have biweekly, some weeklies, mostly we see biweeklies these days.
Yeah.
So you could probably safely double that number and call it roughly 2.5 million in payments monthly.
So I have a question for you. Are these numbers reflective of an RFC?
The RFC is currently turned on. Yes. How about you want to turn it off?
Yeah.
So this is part of what the modeling does down here is it lets us look at, if I do 100% there, no discount, then the RFC element
Look
goes
at how
away.
that number changes drastically for how much the total flow is.
Yeah. So, if you look at how many,
almost by half.
Yeah. What that's really telling us is that those dealers would be for if I were to, if Matt over here was to join me in funding the entire buy here, pay here industry.
How much money do you think you'd need, Matt?
We would need for this year.
I
calculate that it's just short of $5 billion that we would need to fund all the buy here, pay here. This is at cost. This is at cost. And also I've got some, we've got some overhead in there, which I need to look at. But basically, if we just took an overhead number and put it in there, then we've got that as well. But obviously, just to fund the contracts alone is a big number.
Yeah.
So that gives us a feel for how much risk dealers are taking in this industry, and that's roughly 12 months worth of risk. So what that does is it calculates, okay, how many months would it take for us to get to a place where we're generating positive cash? Our incoming cash is in excess of our operations and cost of replacing inventory. That's what I call operational positive cash flow. And so that's where that number comes from. But I think the part that in terms of friction, I think, when you see, if we're estimating here, of course, but if we have 2.5 million contracts per month with buy here, pay here consumers, that's a lot of touch points.
It is, and it's a great opportunity.
It is.
It's a big opportunity.
Tremendous touch points. And so I think there's a great opportunity for us to be able to use those touch points to, to have positive interaction with the consumer. Regrettably, a lot of it right now is not. It's got a lot of friction involved in it. It's because of the dialogue. It's the nature of how folks are, communicating out there in that segment. So that's part of what, I wanted to kind of bring forward today. There's a ton of stuff to analyze in all of this. And I've got, for example, I can see on the screen, I've got the add-ons set pretty low. That wasn't really the purpose of this.
It would be really interesting to me to find out from the people like at Primal Land and Spartan and LHPH Cap, because these are just buy here, pay here, not lease or pay here, right?
Right.
How much money they have invested in this billions, the $5 billion of dollars,
their own money.
Because I would imagine that the dealers that started their business and were able to do it with cash back in the 80s or whatever, and that don't have any capital providers that are
self-funded.
That they're self-funded. A lot of those dealers are wanting to retire.
True.
A lot of those dealers are wanting to get out of the business, and they may not have kids that want to take over, which would be just like a natural flow of here you go, and you just continue with this machine. Right. So for those that are stepping out and maybe having someone purchase the business or whatever, that is a lot of capital to provide.
Absolutely.
It's a ton.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the idea though is that for me, today wasn't really so much about the funding I mean, there's different elements to this conversation, and it's really just, first, I just wanted to calculate, if that number is right about how many dealers, about how much business are they doing, right? Individually and so on. So we can kind of do that math. And you're right. It came out to about an average of 6 contracts per dealer. If that number of 14,000 dealers is accurate.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and that's the thing, is that you've heard some numbers that it's 15 or 20. You've heard, and if the average amount that a dealer is selling now is maybe 10.
Sure.
How much exponentially those numbers shift and change. And, I know you were like, where are we at with how many dealers are out there and what kind of volume we're putting out. But to me, it's mind boggling the amount of capital, the amount of cash,
Yeah.
the amount of money that is generated through this industry.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So it looks like that, that comes out to be about just short of $1 million. I showed $1 billion. It's 900 million in monthly sales. Okay. So you got, so that's kind of, impact on the industry. So again, I think when I see these numbers, there's a lot of different things to think about. I think if we just rough numbers backed into some transaction volume over there, and that just shows we got a lot of, that's a lot of dollars moving. Obviously that comes to about the P&I per month. I don't know if I shared that number. That's, that's settling into the $600 to $700 million per month that's changing hands.
All right. So what do we do with this information?
Well, I would say, first of all, going forward, we want to be able to do anything we can to help NIADA because they're in the best position to be able to collect some information. I'm sure they're already working on trying to nail down the numbers on the actual dealers in the marketplace that are active. So that's a changing number. We're seeing some dealers withdraw from buy here, pay here in the last few years. And so, that number is a changing number. And then I would hope we would be able to work with, my mind goes to the DMS providers would be the best ones. I'm aware that some DMS providers would have possession of this data. Others wouldn't. They got, kind of remote situation or remote desktop connection. It's a question of where the data actually lives. But now I would hope that we would begin to collect more specific information because I think that becomes helpful in trying to identify, how many transactions are taking place, what can be done to make those a smoother interaction, right? Because that's kind of the big picture friction thing that we talk about. It's like this industry it's just the nature of the transaction. Like you've got, it's almost like you got a consumer who doesn't want to be there. They recognize their credit is a problem and they know they have to deal with a buy here, pay here a lot, but it's almost like they really don't want to be there. They don't want to be doing business together in a lot of cases.
Well, then again, there is an amazing, massive opportunity for us as people in the industry to be able to help shift that perception.
So I think that's the bigger part for me is, when we see it and see that friction piece, we see it as an opportunity to go in there and try to do what we can to bring dealers and consumers closer together. Our session tomorrow is really in the marketing track. It's more on the sales side than it is this, transaction level, but it's still kind of in the same vein of, how to connect better with the customer. Right. And so this is part of how I think we have success. First of all, we, some say the whole thing that we're going to talk about tomorrow, that whole topic is like, it's also could be talked about on the collection side. It's absolutely true, but you have to first win the customer. There's nothing to collect. Right.
Well, right? Lots and so much opportunity and
for sure.
But
I think that was the main point I wanted to bring forward today. And, if somebody sees some, things that want to challenge in the numbers, by all means, let me know. I just pulled this together this week and we're just kind of, like I say, backing into numbers that we picked up elsewhere. They seem to be fairly consistent with our own experience in terms of what we see out there in terms of volume and counts and so on. But I just think what it illustrates is that transaction count is high. Okay. And that just means I view it as an opportunity.
It's such a huge opportunity, and it's an opportunity to have a voice too, as an industry because of, the amount of people that we serve and all of those things. So
we should probably wrap up. I know we got folks wanting to get set up.
We do, and it looks like we missed Jared. We'll catch him another time.
Oh yeah, for sure. So the other thing too, just quickly, since we're here at the Arizona conference, obviously, we are all the time.
It's hot.
We're all the time recommending that people get involved in their state associations. Here we are at yet another event. Arizona's working very hard to get this association kind of, connected and put back together. This is supposed to be more attendance this year than last. And so the work continues. And
join
we're
your
happy
state
to-
association.
Yeah, get involved.
Yeah, and it's the money that you put into your state associations. Part of that stays in the states, part of it goes to the national, and that money with both the state and the national are part of what helps to take initiatives to the Hill,
Mhm.
whether it be the state or the Washington D.C. So
Sure.
it helps to be able to change how we can operate.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and there's just so many benefits of being there, but I just think with,
And
with
the-
Arizona, this one example, it takes leadership, it takes people and they have leadership here. They're working hard to get this organization built up. And so I would just say, get involved. We heard Tommy Brandis on the broadcast say that it's not that difficult to get involved. Just show up and be a part of it. And so, yeah, we would say that it's an important thing to do for your state. And so we probably should wrap up here.
All right. Well, guys, thanks so much for joining us today. Just a quick talk about the big numbers in Buy Here, Pay Here. We're glad that y'all joined us. Know that a few of you will be watching this as a recording. If you want to be able to see the charts and graphs, you're gonna need to either watch the recording in Success or go to our YouTube channel
Always
and
find
you
it
can
on
watch
YouTube.
it there. So have a